Hey guys, back from a little hiatus. I've been dealing with a lot of stuff, but hopefully that's all going to simmer down and I can start doing more videos. I did take a break. By break I mean I did step away from the collab channel with Skylar and Dragon Fae, but I am going to try and focus more on this channel because I started abusing it once I joined that collab channel. This video is a little different than my past videos. Normally I do witchy videos. Today I'm going to do a kind of necromantic video, except I'm going to be explaining how I cleansed my bones. This is going to be a part one of a couple videos I'm going to do on bones. You may see the same outfit in these next videos because I'm trying to film a lot for you guys since I've kind of left you out on a limb for a while. Today I'm going to share with you different types of ways to cleanse your bones with flesh still on them. So let's just get on into that. First we're going to start with boiling water. I've seen a lot of conflicting arguments on whether or not you should put bones in boiling water or if you should. It is a fast way to get the skin and flesh off the bones. However, it can be damaging if you do it on too high of a temperature. It can crack your bones and the calcium can leak out, which makes them soft. So that's something to keep in mind. How I do it is by letting them simmer for an extended amount of time. I read somewhere around 165 degrees Fahrenheit is where you should keep it at. Celsius, I have no idea what that is. I would need to do math, and I'm lazy, so if you need Celsius measures, look it up. I'm sorry. The pros of boiling water is that it removes the skin and flesh quicker than some other methods. However, the fat can permeate through the bone, which makes them quite greasy, and yeah, greasy is the only way to explain it. Sometimes it makes them look yellow, so you don't really want that if you want a nice white pristine look. My advice, if you want to boil them beforehand, I would say let them naturally decompose and then get the leftover flesh that is not wanting to come off or that has stuck to the bone. You boil that or simmer it so that it softens up and you can gently pull it or gently scrape it off. You gotta be careful because you don't want to scratch it. I mentioned naturally decomposing the bones, so by this, I mean letting it sit out in the woods and letting beetles and insects and maggots and all those gross and crawly little things eat what is left or eat what you do not want of the specimen. There is one problem with that, and that is scavengers. You need to make sure that large creatures cannot get to the carcass of the animal that you are trying to get the bones of. So for me, I have a fence out in the forest and I have the carcass inside of it. That way it limits the amount of animals that can get in there. Not many animals are going to climb a fence and jump in there. The only ones you got to look out for are birds, and vultures are the only birds that I've had trouble with, and they are very strong and it's hard to keep things away from them. So unless you have a really in-depth idea of how to keep them out, they're probably going to be one of your biggest enemies. So keep that in mind whenever you're trying to figure out a place to rot your bones naturally. Pros of rotting them naturally is that it's less work for you. For the most part, it's less work. You can take your time, you can procrastinate. For me, I love it because I am a procrastinator. As you can see from this channel, I went a while without posting videos, so I love the natural decomposition method. Another pro is that it's very environmentally friendly. It feeds the animals around, it is very natural. I love natural. And it doesn't get rid of the spiritual energy around it. Cons, I kind of mentioned this a pro, but it is time consuming if you are very to the point. It can take up to a couple months. My coyote that I did, it took around 2 or 3 months for it to decompose. Yes, some of the skin did stick to the bones and I had to boil it, simmer it, and I had to put it in hydrogen peroxide and all this other stuff, but for me, I liked the process. It was very hands-on and I did enjoy it, but some people aren't about that. You just need to find what method speaks to you. I kind of mentioned earlier scavengers. Raccoons, fox, wolves, coyotes, vultures, possums, animals like that that can get to your specimen that you have rotting, will take it and will eat it. So that's not always a good idea, you know? Like, you just gotta keep it safe. You gotta make sure that it's safe and protected from outside creatures, because you're spending your time on that and you need to make sure it is safe. Burial. Burial, you need to make sure that you dig a hole deep enough to hold the animal, because once it hits a certain spot, the ground will start raising, and smells will permeate, and you don't really want that because scavengers, again, can dig in and get your animal out. You do not want that, so you need to be careful. Pros of burial is that it is less work, and it is also very environmentally safe and friendly. Like I said, I love that. I'm for that. Praise it. Cons, it is time consuming. I had a possum that I buried, and I had it buried for about 6 months, and then when I pulled it out, I still had to simmer it and put it in hydrogen peroxide. But procrastinating, if that's you, bury it. Or if it's a smaller animal, bury it. To protect buried items from scavengers, I would suggest putting an item on top of it. For me, I put a tire on top of it. Very big, but it also lets moisture and air and insects seep through. Another cool thing that happened with the tire is that whenever I lifted it up, there was snake skin, like, all underneath it. So, if that's something you're into, do that. Be careful whenever you lift something like that there also could be live snakes, and that is very dangerous, you know? Especially depending on where you are. Maceration. Maceration is whenever you put the specimen in water and let it sit for long periods of time. My advice when doing this is that you let it rest in the water for about a day or two without it covered. And then you cover it. Uncovering it allows bacteria and insects and nastiness inside of it, but this nastiness is ideal for rotting your specimen. I then say cover it because you don't want it to be a mosquito bed. I'll get into the mosquito thing in my next part with how to keep them out of buckets of water and hydrogen peroxide whenever you're trying to cleanse your bones. Clean your bones. So if you're interested in that, look for that in the next video. Maceration, the pros of it is that it's relatively fast and it's not that much work, but it stinks. That's a really big con. It really stinks. And you do have to change the water, so if you're not into smelling that nastiness, it's probably not best for you. So I suggest finding a different method. Okay, and my last method that I have found to cleanse bones, or that I have used to cleanse bones, is placing the item in an ant's nest. This is very dangerous because I use fire ants because they're really fast and to the point, but they're also really dangerous and sometimes you can be allergic to them. So make sure that if you're allergic to them, don't put it in an ant's nest. Don't do that. And if you are, be very careful. Some advice I have for if you do put it in an ant's nest, tie a string to a sturdy part of the bone and like have it out of the ant's nest, so that way whenever you need to check on it, you can pull it out, and if it's not done being cleansed by the ants, you can pick it up by the string and put it back in there. That's my advice, but whenever I used the ant method, I did a squirrel skull, and I left it in there for a weekend, a little over 2 days, and when I came back, the bones, it was just destroyed. It was so weak and brittle, so depending on the size of the skull that you were trying to cleanse, you need to make sure that you check on it and that the ants are not going to damage it. But that is just my experience. I've heard a lot of people have a lot of success with it, but they did use bigger skulls and bigger bones. So just keep that in mind whenever you're using this method.